Hi guys and welcome to my aiming guide for Fortnite. In this video I will tell you all the secrets you need to know to get godlike aiming. This video will be split into three different parts. First of all, the peripherals that you use, then the sensitivity, and finally ways to practice your aim and different aiming techniques. For most of you, the interesting stuff will probably be the last topic, but I want to cover the basics first, and I will put timestamps in the description so you can skip to whatever part you want to listen. So let's begin with hardware and peripherals. Nowadays, most gaming mice are equally good in terms of quality, so you don't have to worry too much about the sensor of the mouse. But what is important is that the mouse fits your hand shape and size. So it's very important that you find a mouse that fits you, and you should try many different mice until you settle with one. And if you want further advice on that topic, I would recommend you the channel from Rocket Jump Ninja. He really does great reviews on all the popular gaming mice. When it comes to the mousepad, I would say it's also personal preference if you go for a soft or a hard surface. However, I would say that size matters for mousepads, and having a bigger mousepad simply allows you to play lower sensitivity. I would recommend you to use a mousepad that's at least 35 to 40 centimeters wide. Talking about room, it's important that you make sure you have enough desk space and your mouse cable doesn't get stuck. If you want, you can get the mouse bungee or maybe even just fix it with some duct tape on your desk so it doesn't bother you while playing. Our next topic will be sensitivity, and this is actually a quite sensitive topic. Many people out there say it doesn't matter what sensitivity you use as long as it feels good. However, from my long experience in the shooter game scene and even my own gaming career, I know that people usually tend to use a higher sensitivity because they are a little bit lazy and don't have to move their arms much. But if you think about it, it's just simple physics. You have a much easier time to draw accurately on a big piece of paper than if you were just drawing on a tiny postmark. And the same translates to mouse sensitivity. The more room you have where you need to move your mouse, the easier it will be to move on your target. However, Fortnite overall is a quite fast-paced game, so especially when it comes to building, it can be beneficial to have play a higher sensitivity. So you need to find a sweet spot between aiming accurately, which you can achieve by lowering your sensitivity, but also being able to do 180s fast if you get shot in the back or if you just want to build in all directions. So in my opinion, you should be able to at least do a 360 when moving your mouse from left to right on the mouse pad, and should not go lower than that. This way, if you have your hand positioned in the middle of the mouse pad, you will always be able to do a 180 spin either to the left or the right in order to build cover or shoot behind you. Also, it would be ideal if you can look straight up and straight down with one movement. For me, that results in 0.05 sensitivity on 800 dpi. Of course, you shouldn't straight up copy my sensitivity and find your own, but on the other hand, it should be nothing too extreme. From comparing other strong Fortnite players, I would say you should stay in the range of 0.04 to 0.08 sensitivity at 800 dpi, which also translate if you're running on 400 dpi to 0.08 up to 0.16. And you can just halve the value if you want to have that on 1600 dpi. So anything in that range I would consider as normal. If your overall sensitivity is rather high, you should try and compensate this by going for a lower ADS sensitivity. I would say you can go as low as 0.5 even. And if your overall sensitivity is rather low, you don't have to lower the ADS sensitivity that much. Because for this sensitivity, you need to find the sweet spot where you can switch between targets, but also be accurate enough to hit consistent shots on long range. When it comes to the scope sensitivity, you need to balance out what is more important to you. With a lower sensitivity, long range snipes will be easier. With a higher sensitivity, it will be easier to find your target in close range. Now let's actually discuss aiming. There's two basic techniques. One is tracking, where you basically stay with your crosshair all the time on the target, like you can see me do here in this clip. It is mostly used with automatic weapons like assault rifles or SMGs. The other one is flicking. Usually you do this with weapons that fire single shots. So especially with shotguns close range, your crosshair can't always be on the enemy, and the moment you want to fire a shot, you also try to flick onto his body or head and then just click fire. So before we continue with some aiming drills, there's a few things you should know and get used to for your muscle memory. One of them is your fire rate, so basically what your right index finger does while you're shooting. Because of bloom, the faster you shoot, the less accurate your gun will be. With the current shooting system, if you wait long enough, however, you can get first shot accuracy. So your fire rate depends on which weapon you use and the distance of the enemy. If the enemy is close, you can spam. If it's longer range, you want to go for single taps. And of course, there's also a middle ground. But I will discuss shooting techniques in different videos for each gun individually. In the following clip, I want to demonstrate you the usefulness of pre-aiming. Pre-aiming means that you aim where you would expect your opponent to be. So if you go around the corner, don't look at the ground, don't look in the air. So look right at the new spots that you can see where an enemy could pop up or could be hiding. This way you only need to do very small adjustments to hit your enemy and can almost shoot them without moving your mouse by just going left and right with your WASD. You can very often abuse the third person camera in Fortnite, so your opponent doesn't see you, but you can see him because you're behind cover. And then just like aim straight at him, walk until you have line of sight, and then fire a shot. A very natural way of practicing your aim and staying warmed up in Fortnite is actually harvesting. Not only do you harvest more efficient if you always hit the target, but it also has the effect of keeping your aim on point. So always make sure you hit those targets. But if you want to have further practice for aiming in Fortnite, you have to be a bit more creative. And I will show you a couple of drills here that you can do whenever you're in a safe position, like sitting in a base or running around with a squad and there's not much to do. You can do these tricks to improve your aiming. The first drill we have here will practice your tracking. You can either follow one of your teammates or a friendly player that's just running around with your mouse and try to always stay on him. Or if that's not an option, you can just search for an object and try to follow its shape. So like you see me do here with this house, I go all the way around, move on all edges, and then also do the same for my right click because I have a different aim down sight sensitivity. So you will get used to moving your mouse more accurately. Our next drill here will help you improve your flicking. So basically what you do is search 2 points and try to jump from one to the other. You can do this with a wall and jump from the top left to the top right edge, or just jump from one top of a tree to the next tree. Flicking is incredibly important, especially for these 1 versus 1 fights where you're close range, and having a higher accuracy than your opponent will very often guarantee you to win those fights. One more useful drill here would be the static tracking. So you search for an object on the ground or a player or whatever, and you try to lock your aim on this object while moving your character at the same time. This basically improvises a close range fight where you both are shooting each other with an auto shotgun or SMG. So it is important that you also look for your movement, like jump around, maybe crouch, move left, right, just like it was a real fight against a player that would be shooting you back and you want to dodge him a bit or make it harder for him to hit. Since you actually don't shoot that much in Fortnite, and it's more about like the combination of building, positioning, and then punishing for your opponent that's in a worse position by taking shots, I like to practice aiming also in other games. Especially if you never played shooter games before, I would recommend you to try some deathmatch free for all shooter games, since you are constantly shooting, fighting, and you have instant respawn. I personally really like Quake, since it's also fast paced, has hit scan weapons, and you need good tracking, for example with the lightning gun, as well as flicking like with a railgun. A couple of years ago I was playing lots of Counter-Strike aim practice, and I'm pretty sure this has helped me to bring my aim to the next level. But you should always be a little bit careful, since you don't want to overdo things, like your wrist or your arm might get hurt if you don't take breaks. And it's more about consistency than the intensity of your training. So I would say if you do like 30 minutes each day with like a 5-minute break in the middle, that's more than enough. And like you can see me do here, I was practicing my flick shots, but you can also modify the settings to just go for consistent tracking. But instead, nowadays, I discovered a great game on Steam recently, which is free to play. It's called Aimtastic, and I will make an own guide on how to set up everything. But I think every player should at least do a couple of training sessions to unlock some of the hidden potential just by training your muscle memory in a way that you have never done before. And the great thing about this, all your statistics will be saved, so you can always keep track on how you're improving. And the general idea is that you always want to increase the difficulty a little bit when it gets too easy, so you will consistently get better. There's also a couple of websites like Aim Booster on the internet where you can practice your aim a little bit, but it's only 2D and you can't even convert your sensitivity. So it would be a bit more useful for people who play MOBAs or real-time strategy-based games. But if you quickly just want to jump in, of course, you will also practice your hand-eye coordination. So yeah, overall, a little bit talent will help you, but in my eyes, it's all about consistency and practice. And if you're using your time right and always try to be a little bit better at things you do, you will get those movements in your muscle memory and you will hopefully soon achieve godlike aiming. Thanks for watching.